So we have some beautiful tropical flowers, and I have gone for a darker background just because it's quite interesting to and very different painting on one. And I've just prepped mine really just with one lot of paint. You can do all sorts. So I'm just going to do this small board just so you can see. But actually, I haven't used any water on mine at all. And it depends, but it depends. So if your paint is really thick, you might need to pop a little bit on. But the paint I'm using it's not really too it's fluid enough that I can paint it over. And I found actually that one good coat is enough for me with this particular brand. Some of the brands depends, it might just take a little bit more, but that's fine, just go for it. And I've just gone nice and fairly thickly on, but moving it right into the grain, if anyone was wondering. And that's fine. You can always give it another coat afterwards if you want to. You can also buy something called gesso. I think I might have mentioned this at some point before, and it's like the treatment they put on canvases to make them watertight. So you can go over an old painting that you might not want anymore, and you think, oh, actually, I've got maybe a couple of paintings, and they're just sat there, and actually, I'm not really that interested in keeping them. Um, so you can quite easily put the gesso across that and it'll completely cover it. And you can mix in some of your black paint with the gesso as well to make a darker background to start with. So that makes it a little bit, that's a different way of doing it as well. Or you can, like I did, I actually just went over an old painting today just with this paint. It actually covered, although it won't cover your lumps and bumps if you've got any kind of like textures, but that's fine. So if you pop these like near a radiator, obviously not too near, so it's going to catch fire, but somewhere that's nice and warm, it'll kind of speed up the process a little bit. Or you can get a hairdryer and just kind of keep moving it around until it's dry. So that helps as well. So I'm just going to move this one aside. And my brush at the moment. Move that over there. And then, have a little look at what we've got. So for this one is already dry. But the biggest difference, I think, when you're painting on a dark colour background, especially if it's really, really dark, like black or very, very dark green or brown, then what we've got to think about is the paint, the texture or the transparency of the paint. So this is something we don't often need to think about unless it's darker colours underneath it. So some brands, some of the paints, it may say that something's transparent underneath it. Um, it's not completely transparent, it's not completely see-through, but you may get a little bit of you may be able to see the background through it on the first bit. So you might just need to put a little bit more paint on top, like a couple of layers to cover. And that's absolutely fine. I think it's just being prepared for that needing to happen. So some of are more opaque than others, some browns are more opaque than others. And even within the same set, some will say opaque and some will say transparent. And some other yellows, so even yellows in this, I'm trying to think I've got another one. I think I do. Cadmium yellow, I think, is I'm going to say, but some of them within the same set are opaque. Yeah. So that's yellow. It's lighter, but it's opaque. And really it's just the amount of pigment sometimes that's in it. Or the way it's treated, that might have a bit more white in. Sometimes, there's more that does cover more. So it just depends on the brand. So just go with it and see what happens and explore. So that's the first thing, It's thinking about, making sure we've got enough on. But what is fabulous about these tropical arrangements and these flowers is the structure is often completely different to a lot of the flowers that perhaps, you might be used to seeing or painting. Especially because I've tended to use a lot of the ones that are fairly local, but these are just stunning. And so, we get a lot of these really tall, fabulous, the fabulous foliage, and I'd say it's more structural than a lot. I mean, obviously, there are different structural, there is different structural foliage here, but we tend to see a lot of these more beautiful, these exotic flowers and foliage are, it's bigger and bolder in that way. So it's a different kind of a tone as well. We sometimes find that the colours in the foliage is what I would say is more cooler tone. So there's maybe more blue in it. It's more blue green, quite waxy. And then obviously occasionally we've got some yellows coming through. Maybe it's catching the light a little bit there. So some of these have got white lights in like that capture the light. So what we're going to be thinking about, whichever we're doing, is we can plot things out a little bit, but we'll probably find that that some of it is layers up still, and we'll still need to get those background colours in if you're going to do it. Now, so you can see it on the screen, and also if you prefer to try this yourself, you can, just with a bit of chalk or a bit of pastel, lighter coloured pastel, and you do it ever so lightly. I know I always say that, but what you can do to make it easier, if there's a big arrangement, you can just divide your page into four like that. And you can do the same. Now, you only want a very light touch because you want to just be able to rub it off if you don't, if it's when you're not using it. But you could use a bit of charcoal pencil as well. You can get a white charcoal pencil, or you can just use your pencil. Now I'm doing it really so you can see the difference. But you could do it in your own work as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this one. I mean, they're all this. It's really difficult to pick because they're all so brilliant. If you want to do something in more detail, then there's this gorgeous bird of paradise flower, and then this fabulous blossom as well. We will find out exactly what this one is, and then there's all sorts of amazing, beautiful flowers in there as well. Or you may have your own. You may have your own. So any of those is great. And then I'm just going to, what I tend to try and do is I'll look at where the vase is and where the bottom of it is and where I want to finish it. And I'm looking proportionally, using half of my page to do that, working out proportionally how much space this vase takes up. And I'm looking and it's only about just half, kind of maybe just under half of the way. And that flower's coming over the top of it anyway. So what I want to be doing, I'm going to go one side, getting this vase in, and I'm following the curve as best I can. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. You can move it, the line. This bit I'm not drawing perfectly. I'm just going to get a little bit of, start to get some information in, really, is what we're doing. We're just prepping it. And then the other side, you can only just really see. It's quite difficult. It's quite dark down one side. So it's not the easiest curve to see. And it, depending on what angle we're looking at it, it might not look perfectly symmetrical anyway. The only other thing with a vase we might be looking at is the bottom here to work out how deep the ellipse is, which basically just means the curve. So anything that's got an ellipse, for example, jar of water, etc. We're looking at from where we're sitting, what that curve is like. And all we have to do for that is just find something straight. And if it's a deep ellipse, it'll come all the way down. But that one's quite narrow. It doesn't really curve too much. So I'm going to keep that fairly flat ellipse there. And obviously we can't really see the top too much because that flower's coming in. And then from there, arrangements don't need to be really kind of overwhelming at all, because what we can do is take some of the big chunks, like the bigger pieces within an arrangement, and start to plot those in. And as long as we make space I'm not a fan of starting down here and then working up, because quite often if you get something wrong down here, by the time you get up, it's all going off the end or, or coming off this side. So you're almost better just to plot a little bit. Like I'm just going to literally just pop a couple of lines here to make sure I know that's where, that the edge is coming. Now I've added a little bit of an edge on mine because this is the only one that's slightly thinner than the others. So if we scale it up to a something, we're going to have a little bit of extra space at the end here on this side, which is fine. You can just add that like dark and have it finishing over here. So all I'm doing is I'm just checking, I'm going to fit everything in. Again, with the leaf that's coming out there, I'm just going to put a little mark. I'm using this quarter to be able to help me to do that as well, where I want that to come to as well. And then now I know it's all going to fit on, and I might just put a little mark where I think this leaf is. And again, we can shift any of these lines. Everything's movable. And then I will just spend my time mostly painting, but I'm going to go and get the shapes into place just so you feel a bit more confident. So I'm going to start with this centerpiece here. And again, I can use this bottom section to work out that it comes about 3/4 of the way up, maybe slightly more. I'm not going to really spend hours doing the petals. I'm just going to get a general idea of where it's coming and whether it's coming out further. Feels like it's coming out a bit where this darker edge might be. So I'm getting something that looks like a petal, but I'm just not worrying too much about the shape until I get going with my brush, just to get everything in, because we can adapt these as we go. So anything that you don't like, you can just move a little. And as I said, I'll move a little bit of the shapes and things of that. And then from here, I'm looking at these. I'm going to go for these straight in for these other two flowers, and then I know I can then get this other one in. Or you can just work your way up if that's easier. If you think, oh well, I can see that one comes up to the center line or whatever, wherever you've got yours. I'm going to get this flower in. See, a lot of this we'll just pop the shape out. And then, it's not going to start to look like the petals and things don't take shape until really quite far on in the painting. So don't worry if you're going through it and you think, oh, crikey, it's just, I can't really see what's happening with it yet. That's normal because we've got to put all the shadows and then the highlights and the other colours in there before we start to see things to really turn in 3D. And then
Rebecca, can I ask a quick question?
so just having a little look, getting this next flower in, or you could just go across and so it's the big ones. It's getting these big ones in really it's very helpful. So again, there'll be a lot of overlap here. And then we've got another big one here. Something in between. Beautiful. It looks like another bit of bird of paradise there. So you just want some general shapes in there. It's lovely. The lovely thing about doing these, as I said, is to observe all of the different shapes that you might not necessarily look at that often. Unless you're lucky enough to have some tropical flowers in your garden, that'd be pretty amazing. And then I'm just going to go on down here. I've kind of got most things in. I'll show you how I'm just going to represent these other little bits down here. But while we're there, I'm just going to fill out now and just get some of these nice other ones in here, these leaves and things as well. But something like this, where you've got lots of kind of what I'd call them, not frilly, but there's a lot going on. I'm just going to create a frill shape with my chalk. Just kind of just dab it on really. And you can do this with your paint as well when you get going with your paint. It's finding how you want to represent these shapes really. You know, up here, again, we've got these more frilly shapes than here. But these, all we're doing is we're just putting like a marker in. This is our marker of making sure that we can get in what we want to. And this flower here looks, it's not, but it's a little bit like a marigold in terms of the waviness of the petals. It's lovely. Um, you know, the same coming behind here, but I've got like I want to get this leaf in here. So there's another one coming behind. So when we actually start to paint this in, we're going to have to look at the layer that comes behind like we were doing last week, except our layer was our sky. This time it's leaves and foliage. And then again, up here, we've got lots of these beautiful, beautiful flowers. But whichever one you're doing, you know, we can get some of these other bits behind if you get some of the other foliage behind if you want. And here, and again, this layers up, but you can get this whole bird of paradise flower in here and then start to look at some over the other side to get in. They've just got, these colours are stunning, aren't they? And these are repeated, so you get to kind of, if you've gone for this one, you can look at how to, you know, how the shapes are repeated and get familiar with that. So I'm just looking here now at potentially getting some. I'm going to move this now actually because it's hindering me. When it starts, if you've got a grid on and it starts to hinder you because you've got what you need to in place and things, then just move it. I'm just going to bring in some of the pointed leaves here out to the side. Gorgeous, aren't they? And sometimes people find the leaf, you know, panic a little bit when it comes to leaves. So all you need to think about with that is if because it's got two, because it's not symmetrical, something I would suggest you can do is follow the vein. So follow the shape of the vein of the leaf there, like that. And then try and put one side in. So this one has got an interesting, let's go back of that leaf. This leaf has got an interesting shape. It kind of comes flat down here. Then there's a little gap and then it comes to a point there. So you can get one side in and then use the other side of the vein, follow that, and then follow it round because it's not symmetrical the way it's twisted and turning. And that's really how you can just get the shape of a leaf in much more easily if it's not symmetrical, because they often aren't, do they? They twist and they move and they turn and they're on an angle. So same again here, just going in with the chalk. And it's difficult to see a lot of it. It's very dark. I have to get that almost to blend in. So I'm doing one side and then the other side, which is different again, like that. A lot of this we can put in with the different tones of paint as well, and we can use the backgrounds to come through. So then moving up here, I'm looking at the foliage that's coming behind the bird of paradise flower, but I am going to just pop some of it in. So just decide how far up you want it to come, how far up this quarter. So again, that's quite helpful. I'm looking here, it's coming, I think it's coming to about there. And then it comes up and out across here. And then we have that beautiful center there. So you can just break each of these parts into little smaller bits, really. And then just, you know, look at the independent, each of the colours separately when we start to do it. I mean, this like little blue center, I might not even, I may put it in, I may not. I may just do it with the paint because I'm going to have to put the red paint behind. So I might just paint the blue one over the top. And then from there, we're looking at the other you know, where this foliage is going. You don't have to draw every thong on there either, every throng, sorry, all of the tiny little bits. You can we can do that as we go if you want to. I'm just going to pop it in so you can see whereabouts I'm going, but I will show you another way of doing this just by going in with a brush really. But if it helps you feel more confident to get it in, by all means, go for it. And then over to this side, really, I mean, these leaves have got a lot of different shapes, these lovely, and this is the thing with a lot of the foliage, it's to get the different shapes in. So it lends itself brilliantly to really layering the paint up when we get going and making it put it on a bit thicker. And again here, looking at the center, where it's coming down, that helps to put the center in. And then from there, you can start to pop in how things are coming off the sides and things like that. And then this way, but again, we can put a lot of this on as we go with our brush. So it may be you just discard these lines later on. So I don't really spend too much time drawing it because we often just end up going right over the top. So I'm just going to move any of these lines now that you find that, as I said, getting in the way, just move those off. If it's starting to hinder what you're doing, because there's too many extra lines that you don't need in there. And just move those off. And then I've just got a little bit left here on there so I can test some of the colours. But really, move that out of the way as well. It's interesting that though, doesn't it? Because the chalk comes off so much easier off a prepped canvas board or paper than it does actual paper. So what we've got, obviously, when you've got your dark background in place, then we need to start to think about what we're layering up first. What's right at the back? And mostly it's foliage is underneath the flower heads a lot of the time. Sometimes they weave through, but there isn't one weaving through this one here. There is one weaving its way through a little bit there, so you can put those in when you feel that you need to. Some of these cross over. So again, it's just looking at what you need to get in behind that one. So actually it might be the flower here, the bird of paradise, a bit of that flower there, and then you overlay that. So we're looking at layering up the different colours and tones. So I'm just going to go in with this. So to start with, I'm just going to use one green. So if you've got a blue green in your kit, like Viridian green, something like that, phthalo green, phthalo green. But I'm just going to go in with I think this one's, yes, it's chrome green, or sap green. Now, they tend to be slightly on the warmer side, but that's not too warm, is it? Because we've got some yellow tones and things coming up at the top. It's just they're a lot darker and cooler there. So I'm going to account for both of those things. I'm going to get some yellow out because I'm going to want to put some yellow colours in there. I'm going to pop some yellow, I've got some green, and what I can do then is make a yellow green, make it warmer. Right. And I'm going to have some blue, just small ultramarine, but we could use it, whichever blue's in your kit. I'm going to add this blue on here because I'm wanting to I may well want to darken off my blue a little bit to make it more of a blue-green in places. And I'm also going to add a little bit of white just so that I might want to make a little bit of a tint. Now, with tropical flowers, a lot of them are very vibrant, and this is very similar, really leading on from what we were doing last week, even though we were doing sunsets. I think I remember me saying if you were doing a lighter sunset, you might want to add more white because it was more pastel. But if you wanted to keep the vibrancy in the sunset and make it more intense, not to put much white in, it's exactly the same here today. So if we want to keep some of these flowers very bright, we don't want to be adding white to those. But if we've got peachy colours, for example, we might add white to those. So we think, having to think, how do I keep the intensity and the depth of it? I'm just going to get a little, actually, I'm just going to mix a little bit of colour here before I start. Now you could use, the other colour you could use to darken colours is brown as well. But I'm just going to start with this for the moment. And then we can leave those dark colours to come through the background as well. So I'm thinking in here, I can see several tones and it's building up all of those tones in all of the foliage and all of the flowers. It's going to really help us get a really 3D effect too. So I'm going to just move some of this out, this into the middle here. I may just use that as it is, but I'm also then I have another green here. I'm going to make much more yellowy. So let's see. You can see it's kind of more yellow green, but it may be that you just want to go in with a bit of bright yellow, which I'm going to do on here actually. So I can make several shades from there. Then I'm going to go in with a bit more green to make a blue green. So I'm just adding a small amount of blue. Now blue's very, very, very intense pigment. So you might want to put a very small amount in and build up, but you'll see, I'm going to test these colours out in a minute before I add any water or do anything, which I'm not going to add much water today to these ones. And when I'm going, it's becoming a bit more of a darker blue, sorry, green. Just going to split this into two and make one that's a bit blue-green and then one that's very blue-green. We go, and then I'm going to test these out. So just gives me a bit of a start. So that's my normal green, which I am going to use on there. Then I've got a yellow green here that I might want to use through the tips and things. And then I'm just going to wash this off. I'm going to go in with a blue green, and I've gone one that's got a lot of blue in it. So we can see it's a cooler toned green. It's got more blue in it. And another blue green with less blue in it and put underneath. So we can start to kind of go, well, I've got quite a few greens there that I can use. And then the last one would be, if there's any very light bits that catch in the light that are, I feel that they are, you just need a tint with green, you just need a bit of white in there. Just a small amount because it's capturing the light, but it's not completely white, but it's very light green. Just where the highlights are. So we'd be building this up with all the shadowy ones, the light ones. So that's what my highlight's going to look like. I'm going to try that, and I can always add more or less after I've done it. And that's for the highlight and the bright side by side. So a combination of all the colours we can see in there really helps. Now then, you can pop that on. You can pop it on with a really thin brush, a thin round brush, and just keep going up like that. Or you can use, I think I mentioned this a rigger brush. So I'm mentioning it because lots of people get them in sets and don't know what to do with them. So I'll just take you through that. So it's really long and thin. Use them for branches as well and all sorts, but they're great for kind of keeping a straight line. So you wet them and then roll them in the colour paint that you want. So you can see I'm just literally just rolling that along. And then you can go that way or this way, and then you just drag them. Now you might need to load your paint, you might need to load it up a bit more with the pigment because As we said, some colours may be a bit translucent, more translucent than others. So I'm just applying a small amount of water there, but just enough so I can get plenty of paint on. And then the rigger should hold the shape, and then you can kind of just drag it all the way down basically. Although it's even a bit thick, I suppose, for my the size of paper I've got, card I've got here. And then all you need to do, so you're either using that or using your other one, is start to weave in all the different colours that you can see in the shapes. People like riggers because they hold, you can keep them on the paper for longer. But just have a play with them and see what you're going to get with them. And it's like anything, you know, the first time you use a new tool, takes a bit of practice, it's not a problem. But they are quite handy. So what I'm doing now is I'm loading up some of these different tones. It feels like it's darker at the bottom. Feels like I've got more blue-green in some of these colours here. I'm going to start bringing those in. And sometimes it's easier just to make it all one colour and then go over and kind of touch up the highlights over the top. And that makes it appear thicker when you've got a couple of tones on there rather than just one. So I'm popping in a couple of different tones in there because when you look at them, some of them catch the light, some of them have other colours underneath, and you can do the same with a thin round as well. So I'm going in, thinking about the different tones. These feel a bit lighter over here, so I'm going to go in with another one. And it doesn't matter whether your foliage is long and thin or your foliage is wider like this. You just can build up the shapes you're seeing with those. So rather than press down, I'm just letting it drag. If I press down, I'll just show you on this side, what will happen is, so if you drag, you'll get a consistent thin line. If you press, you're going to get a thicker line, and then it might go thin again when you pull it up. So it's quite a different, just kind of pulling it along really, if you're wanting a thinner one. Same with a round brush. Just let it hold it further down, hold your paintbrush further down the handle. And I'm going to go in with some of these highlights at the ends. And when we get a couple of different tones in there, it really helps. Because it's starting to kind of create a little bit more thicker foliage, which is great. Because it's showing, the fact that um, we get those highlights on there and we get the shadows. There's a lot to look at. So even if you put like all your flowers and you're doing one colour, so for example, this one, once you've got your foliage in behind, you can just follow any of the lines and things behind there. But once you start to get flowers in, when you get one colour on, it's going to feel flat. It's not until you start to put your shadow colours in, any darker ones, then any other brights, then it starts to pop. So I'm going to go in now and layer up these with some of the brights, some of the yellow greens now. And not all the foliage has, some is very dark. Um, you can just use different types of dark foliage to do that. So just enjoy away, putting in some of these gorgeous colours. Crisscross them across. And again, it's down to your interpretation. So we're all going to see things and shapes and things ever so slightly to each other, which is great. So with your mark making, just make the marks that feel comfortable and feel nice. This is we're not trying to recreate this photograph at all. What we're trying to do, and I always say it's so true, is our artist's impression of what we can see. So we're trying to put our lovely mark making in there. Because that's really important to see. I'm just going to pop a bit of shadow back. Sometimes we can lose the definition because the shadow's gone. Or you could put your dark colour back, you could even put the black back between it as well if you wanted to, if you've got too much of one. There we go, so I'm going to leave that for now. And then I'm just going to work on this foliage as well at the top that we've got there. So I'm just, again, looking at the different colours in it. Same in here. We've got all sorts of colours. Some of these are a bit lighter. Might be a bit of a yellow green in there. And then even a highlight of a light one. That might be blue green. That might be yellow green. So just keep looking at all the different colours and tones on your foliage on there. And that's the beauty of it, is that we can really explore. So I'm going back to the other brush now, which is just my round pointy one. Just get a little point on there, just very gently. And if you've got heavier bodied acrylics, you just add a little bit more water to make them a bit more fluid, because they're going to have a good coverage anyway. Got some little highlights in. Got some yellowy greens in there. And you'll see when we start to add those other bright colours or any highlights that are on there, it starts to, make it a little bit thicker. Not literally thicker, but makes the foliage appear a bit thicker with all of these different layers of colours in. The highlights come forwards. The shadows go backwards. I know I always say this, but it's so true. Just really enjoy getting lost in this, because it's such an absorbing subject. It's lovely. People absolutely loved it today. I think because if we're not as familiar with the topic as well, especially if you don't really see shapes on it, shapes day to day like this, it's not around in your environment, then we're not as used to, we'll have to concentrate a little bit to really see what we're looking at. Just keep working through. It's all like a learning curve of new shapes, first time we've done them. Also, actually working on a dark background as well. We're having to possibly layer colours up for the first time a bit more than usual. I'm popping the shadow where you get any depth between in any leaves, putting the shadow back between them. And then a light on either side. Any other foliage that's maybe behind, it might be a bit darker because it's in the shadows. Just pop that in. And the beauty is you can leave your dark background or your background colour, whatever that might be, to come through. So it's pretty good. And that's the good thing about getting some base on there is that you can let it pop through. Just keep going. If you see a highlight, pop that in. If you see a shadow, pop that in. I've made that pop through a little bit too much because it's not as bright as this. I'm going to just put some shadow back over it. So you can do that as well, of course. You can correct anything with any colours. And then I'm just going to continue getting a little bit more foliage in here, which is this lovely leaf. They're gorgeous, almost like the banana leaves, aren't they? Just beautiful. And you can start to create the shape by putting the lines in. And we'll take a pause after I've done that one, actually. So I'm just going to go in with my round brush. If you're doing on a big scale, you can use a different brush. Use your round brushes and push in, all the colours up in with the point of your brush. Or you can use a brush called a filbert, which has got a lovely, you can find it, left it down there. Let's have it. So a filbert, it's like a flat brush, but it's got a curve to it. So you can see that there, that lovely curve. So that makes it really nice to be able to do, um, you know, to get up into the points of petals and things like that. But you can also use it on its side. I'll show you that because that's a very interesting one. I'm going to dip it in some water. This is just maybe for later. But you can you can twist it and turn it. So you can just do it on its side like that and then let it come down and then let it come up again. So you can end up with some interesting, just by the pressure, kind of almost leaf shapes. If you were doing something a bit bigger, press it down, put it back up again, as well as using it that way now, just to create all sorts we can do with a filbert. So if you've got one of those in your kit and you think, well, what's this for? Then you have a go with it. Great, just having a play. So I was talking about this leaf here. So a lot of the time we can create the shape just by using contour lines of different colours. So mine is so tiny, I'm going to go back in with this little brush. So I'm going to go in with a slightly darker green, I feel. I'm going to go in with this blue green, and then I'm going to add some brighter colours to it. So And then all I'm going to do then is I'm going to use the brush to bring some of the, I'm going to go in with, I might even go in with some of this yellow green actually. And then just bring the shape around and help it just contour. And you can go in with really thick paint to do this, you know. You can really layer up that paint quite thickly if you want to, or you can keep it a bit thinner. So I'm bringing it round and contouring. Might do it with the highlight as well. It's quite bright, isn't it? But you could go bright if you fancy what you want a good contrast and go a bit brighter. If not, you can just make it slightly lighter. And then I'm just going to bring this onto the tip actually. Bit yellowy. So we're just gradually building up the shapes of all of these flowers and leaves just by observing all of the colours we get in there. So that's the start of the top of that one. And we can always change the colour because it does feel a bit cooler. Now I'm looking at it, it doesn't feel quite as warm as that, but we'll see. And then you can always put your darker colours back through if you're feeling it's got too light in places and just weave a bit of the other colour through. Or you can even add a darker colour, you know, add a bit more dark blue to the green and darken it off even more. And we just keep going like that. There's lots of the leaves and things in here that we can put in. You can, you know, just keep looking at the shapes and adding them. Follow one side and then the other. If there's anything that looks a bit more lighter on the side, then, you know, just blend that in a little bit. But it won't really show until we've got lots of it in place. So we have to almost it's almost like telling a story with building up the different bits and pieces, which is the enjoyable bit. So where you get some really dark bits there, you can even use the background of your um, of your board, the colour of the board to do it. So I'm just going to bring in chunks of this leaf here. And then I'll put the centre one in with a bit more, centre vein in with a bit more the light one, I think. So that's great. So I've gone in dark first there. Probably do that with quite a few of these colours first. And then go in with another lighter line over the top. Just popping them out. And then I'm going to stop and come and have a chat with you all. Where it's very dark in the background there, you can almost make this paint much thinner. So water it right down so it's like that. And then when you bring a bit of that over the top here, it then brings a bit of colour in, but then it melts away into the background to get that shadowy effect there that we can see. And then as it's coming forwards, you can add a bit more pigment to it, look. So it's just a quite a nice way of working with acrylics, is that. I've gone in with a bit of bluey colour on there as well. I've just added a bit of blue to that. And then obviously you bring in, if there's any warmth to it, you can bring in any of the yellow greens, and we're just working through and adding some of the shapes and colours. Any little lines we see. It's only really this end that's yellowish. Of mine, that's all I can see anyway, but again, putting in what you can see. And then any lines, any highlights, we'll get a much brighter contrast with those then. And that's really interesting to do. But again, you can even, here, you can even really thin down your highlight so that it just gives a subtle, softer glow. If you don't want to get all of it like that blind, you can make that softer. You can make some of the colour around here softer just by almost adding a little bit of a thinned down version over the top, so it blends in with the leaf a little bit more rather than being a really bright line. So if you want him to blend, just water it right down so it comes over the top and gives you a little, just enhances the colour just a little bit. Like over here, it's quite subtle, isn't it? That we might not need a really big highlight because it's actually in the shadow. So we could just thin down some of the other green paint that we've got. Just so it gives it a slight highlight, just like that. And then it just kind of disappears. Well, I'll just take a pause there because this is what we've been thinking about a lot and see how we're getting on, see how you're getting on there. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to go in and start with some colour now, just for a change. With this one, it's not one that we're likely to finish. We might do if you work really fast, but I don't want you to have to rush at all. So I'm looking at these colours, this one here. I could do the bird of paradise up there if I'm working top down. I might just do that. And then I'm going to come and mix some colours for this because these are very different. You've got quite a vibrant red there, and this one's more peachy. That one's in the middle. So if something's more peachy, there's probably a little bit more, there's probably a tiny touch of white in there. Whereas when we're going in with a vibrant colour, we don't really want to add too much, too much. But here, because these are fairly creamy paints, I'm not going to put any water in there to water them down. I'm just going to go in with that colour. It's going to pop off the background. And then what I will do is add any of the other kind of tones that I want, like any lighter ones, for example, on there. So I'm going to go in quite vibrant to start with. This one feels a bit more pastel-y, so what I might actually do there. And again, you can just test them against on your board. But I'm going to come in here with this. I'm going to make this slightly peachy. You can make it slightly peachy. I've got a warmish red. This is Acadian red. And a warmish, I don't think this is Acadian yellow, but it is Azo yellow. And I'm going to mix those together. And you just keep testing until you get the colour. I'm going to add a bit more yellow in that. Yeah, I'm going to go in with that one. You could even add a bit of white, but I'm not going to do that until my top layer. I'm going to get this one underneath. So again, I've got no water in there, just paint. And then just bring some of these lovely shapes in to follow the curves round. Really great for our observation, just looking and looking and looking. And then I'll just put some of the other layers of the lighter colours and things on top there, but I want the nice vibrant ones underneath. Colours you choose are entirely up to you as well. You can make them a bit more muted if you want. So I'm going to go in with a nice bright Cadian yellow again here because it's quite a warm yellow. But again, I'm going in with no water. If you've got a heavy bodied acrylic, you probably will need to put some water on because they are super thick in comparison to the creamy ones. This will start to really pop now. And then again, this colour over here, overlapping. We're just overlapping all of these shapes. Doesn't matter if you don't get the shapes perfectly well. You can then just paint them back in. So if I didn't like this, I'd just get my red and paint back over it. Also, it's fine to just have a go and not quite get the right shape, because then the next time you do it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I realise I need to make that shape instead. So it's all really good practice. And I'm still learning. And I've been painting for 30 about 38 years. Quite a long time. I learn new stuff all the time. So it's just a really fun journey. Never stop learning. And you can start at any point, which is fantastic. Just getting to grips with all the different shapes is really fabulous. So, when you get to here, if you want to continue to work on these flowers that are back, you can look at, are there any other tones, any reds or oranges or anything that need to go in there? We start to layer up the colours now, even there. So I'm feeling that there's some pinkish tones there at the back. I'm going to use a little bit of white and a bit of red together. And this is just the kind of tone that I do want for these. So where it catches the light just at the top, I'm going to kind of weave that through a bit. And then I can see that bit down there. I'm going to pop that in there. And then on this one that I've just done, seeing some lighter tones in. So we can start to pop some of these colours that we're seeing in there. I might just have a touch of water if I want it to move a little bit, because I'm going over the top of another paint area now. It's much lighter, so I can then might even put a little bit of white on the end here where it's just catching it this end. So many things we can do, even with this, these other little areas. I'm going to get these lovely blues in. So I'm going to go with a nice bright blue underneath. Sometimes having the bright colour underneath is how we see the lighter colours on top. So without the darker one, we might not see it as well. So I'm going to pop this one in. And then going over the top, popping a lighter one in, I could go in with white, or if that's going to be a bit too intense, I could make a little tint with a bit of blue and a bit of white and see what happens there. See if that's going to be the right colour. Let's see. But what we're doing is, I need a bit more blue in that, I think, is we're just making these decisions all the time. So you can still test. I need a bit more white in that again. Let's see. Just be mindful of your brushes getting really full of paint, because they store, the acrylic gets to the bottom sometimes to the bottom, and then it gets very thick of paint. So just give it a really good kind of rinse out on the side of your paint pot. And then you can make a decision about any other colours you want to pop in there. If you want them to make another blue in between, for example, or something. Just You can make all of these decisions as you're working. And then, is there anything else that you've missed out that you want to pop in? Do you want to make some brighter, for example? Want it to pop a bit more? Any other elements that you've missed out? This is like a bit of a purpley colour. If you don't have purple, you can mess about with your blue and your red. See what that gives you, the colour. Is there a bit of shadow in there? What have you got? What do you want to pop in? Just keep having a play. And then we're just working our way down, aren't we? Down these beautiful, beautiful flowers. Are there any highlights in there? And then it's on to the next flower. So that's where with this kind of these flowers, we're just working our way like that. I'm just going to work my way now with a couple of these, couple more of these leaves in here. Let's show you before you move from your blue hues, your green ones are sort of okay. So I'm just going to pop in another one of these. And again, we're kind of popping on different tones on top, starting with a darker, if you can. If you can't, it's fine. And then we're putting some little highlights. And then, of course, any bold colours is going to pop beautifully in this bouquet. So I'm just going to look at something like this. It feels a bit frillier. Kind of got, I'm going to go in with a darker green, greeny blue. Just put a little bit of almost a stalk, I suppose, so that I've got something to work off. And then I'm just going to get some of these lovely yellows and just dab them either side. And this is where we have to, find a colour that works. I'm just going to go in with yellow, or you could go in with a lighter yellow actually, if you want to. And then, or just start with a darker one. And then I'm just going to, just try and recreate that frilly dottiness, really, just with a bit of dotting on here with my brush. So this is where it's really down to you to just have a little go and try and get the feeling of the flower and just enjoy kind of popping those marks on. There's no right or wrong to this at all. This is down to personal, how you just personally choosing to represent these beautiful colours. Now I would go, so I can see a bit more clearly, I'll go in with one darker, slightly warmer, and then I might put a lighter yellow on there as well. Now, if you haven't got two yellows, that's fine. You could just put a little bit of a tint on with a bit of it. I'm just going to go in. This is Nathan's yellow. So, but you could use lemon yellow if you've got a different vibrant one. And I'm just going to place two yellows, one over the other, that slightly contrast. And then that helps as well. You see, it feels like the foliage is thicker again because we're using different tones to thicken the marks. And that's it, it's just finding a way that feels right to you to represent those flowers and feels good. A little frilly one at the side. Then I'm going to come on to one of the big flowers that should hopefully help a little bit with the placing. So any of these little ones, it's just you dabbing away really. Now this is quite peachy, feels quite peachy, but you could also um, explore using a bit of more of a pinky one. I'm going to actually mix a bit of Naples yellow with this. This is that other yellow I've got that will make it a little bit slightly different tone to the other one because I put in white into the other mixture. So sometimes if you've got a very light yellow, popping it in just gives you a different feel. And again, I'm just going to try and create this kind of frilly feel. Just I like to dot things, but just so you find something that works for you. And then I'm going to go in with a highlight again, and then we'll be able to see both of them. So a highlight, it might be just a yellow on its own, or it might be a bit of a white colour or something mixed with it, a tint. So mix white with the colour that you've got already. Just have a go and explore and see what comes up. I think I'm going to have to go white actually with this one. And again, you can just keep practicing, just keep testing these colours as well, of course. I'm going to try this. So I'm just going to dot, not many places, just a few. Just to give a bit of contrast. You can also go in with a darker red or something as well to put a bit of depth back in it. That'll make, the shadows a little bit or not. And then I'm going to go in and try and create some of these lovely petals, but you'll see all of these flowers that have got these really deep centres to them. We need those darker colours in the centre. So it's finding which one, how dark you're going to make it. This one's quite a bit of yellow and a bit of red. More yellow. Just going to put a little tiny bit of white in that one. And this wants to be my centre really. So I'm going in there, creating these interesting centre shapes. And I might need to add a little bit more because this is quite translucent. It's quite, we can see through it a little bit. So I'm almost creating the centre shape in here. But right at the bottom, where you see it go down the thickest, I'm actually going to add some red in there. So where I'm feeling it needs to be a bit darker right in the centre, so it feels like it's going to go further back even. And then start to create some of the shape of these petals by using the darker colour underneath, because it's casting a bit of a shadow there. And that's what I'm going to go in with and try and get the shape between them, between the petals. You could even use red or something that's going to be dark, but maybe not too intense. It's going to make it feel too like there's too many lines in it. So it's getting some definition without making a really harsh line. Sometimes if we use a really dark black or something, it might feel like it's very flat because we flattened it with lots of lots of colour and shape. So just working around and in some interesting shapes, and look a bit strange at first. And then I'm just going to find the colour I've been using and start to try and bring these little contour lines in. So they're just curves. That's all we're doing. Curved lines try and bring the shape inwards. So it starts to, you start to almost get that folding of the leaf or the pattern of the leaf anyway. I'm going to do that for all of my leaves on this side in the same similar tone that I've used in the middle. So a bit of a shadow there. And then we're just bringing curving these lines out. If we can show a curved line, it starts to create the shape of the flower like that. And this is where it does take a while, so don't worry if you think, oh crikey, it looks really strange. It will do at this point. It's when we start getting the light ones between it as well. We need all of those elements in place. So I'm just going to go in now and start to put the light ones in. Now, I don't think I'm going to go for bright white in a minute. I'm going to go for a very light pink though. And we would do this for all of these flowers really. This is similar way of doing it. So I'm now just getting some white and mixing it in with that lovely colour that we've had. So it's much lighter, but it's not it's not too light. I'm just going to have to just get my other water out. Just wash off my a bit and then start to then put the other ones between. So it's a little bit like the sweets, those kind of humbug shaped ones that they curve over, don't they, the lines. And we're starting to get keep going. Keep going with some of these shapes. Bring them round in between. And then I'm going to go for a highlight. So wherever the very lightest is now, I'm just popping a little bit of white on that. So it pops the very top of the petal. So we're still only halfway with the leaves at this point, but just wherever it's really capturing the top here, from here. So this is how we get some of it to really pop. And then we need to get we need to also then get the stamen in as well, the leaf on there. And it's quite difficult, isn't it, to actually see that. So what we might need to do is just put a little kind of mark in there. You might even need to just use a bit of blue or something. So it's just slightly, you can just slightly see it there coming out the middle. And then obviously this um, beautiful stamen there coming out the middle. So all of these things are going to make it start to work. Well, I've gone a bit far down with my stamen there, actually. I was going to bring it there. And then again, I want a lighter one at this side, a lighter one at that side. That's what I'm seeing. And then just a little bit of dark either side here. We get a bit of shadow in there. And then if you've got anywhere on your flower you think, actually, I need to pop a little bit of a darker colour back, you can go in and do that as well. And then we just keep doing that, build up the next flower then, because we're underneath then, look, you see under there, we've got some foliage coming through the back. So we need to think about getting some of this greenery underneath this flower as well. So again, that's going to give us some of the picture. So let's not, don't, try and get the greens that come behind it and things. And also you can see there some of that other flower. So also it counts what we put behind because it helps create the shape of the flower head by getting some of the other foliage underneath it as well. And by putting that in, we then start to see, the shape there as well. It might be like you've got a dark area that needs putting in, for example, under here. Or you can see, a bit more of the flower behind that we had there. That might be coming behind it a bit as well. So there's all these other elements around the bouquet. So we're just taking a section by a section there and then just try to pop in. But these are all quite similar flowers. And again, it will just be how we choose to represent it. There. In. And then there's another flower there and another one there, another one here, and obviously we've got this lovely vase. Now I will just before I come back to you for the final time, I'm just going to quickly just show you something for that vase because we can continue our own little journey with all of those flowers and then it will just keeps, adding on all of these different things. It keeps, it'll keep working then. So here we put the light on last. So we've got all the shadows, all the different greens. You can wiggle it, wiggle your brush side to side to get these on. I'm going to bring some of this greeny colour in here, green and yellow. So you can just build up all of these different colours. You can make some of the vase quite vibrant or not. Leave some of the darker patches in it as well. It's quite dark around there. So this is the same as I was saying before. If you just really thin down some paint so it is translucent, then you're suggesting that there is something there, but not, you can't see the edge of it. So it kind of blends in over the background there. but we know it's there, don't we? We can see all the bits. And then we just keep adding to that. Now, if you want to make this less vibrant, then you could just put a tiny bit of white or something in it. It takes out the colour, it makes it a bit more pastel. And again, how you represent that vase is entirely up to you. You can, just do some little side to side action, soften it down, or you can make a really, straight mark. I'm going to go in with a bit of side to side because that's what it feels like. It feels a bit marbly effect to me. It's beautiful. I wish I had that vase. It's so lovely. Isn't it stunning? So I'm just wiggling it, thinning it. So how you do this is just down to really how you want to represent that mark making. Now, as we go around here, I'm getting a bit lighter, so I'm thinning this down to make it a bit more translucent. Again, you can see that because it's going into the shadows there, so I don't want it to be too bright. But there we go. You might be able to see some lines across or lines down, or you might want to pop in some brighter green in there. Can't actually see the green for a minute. I need to go back in and just work some of that other green back in there. We're going with a pop of up in there. And then I'm just going to show you how to pop the light over the top to make that reflection. Now I'm just going to go back in with this. Put a bit more, this green a bit more back in because I'm feeling it wants to be a bit brighter in places. So that's what I'm going to put in. And again, I'm just wobbling my brush about a bit to try and create that mottled effect. I might just pick out just the odd brighter bit on one side where it seems to be the most bright. But again, that's how bright it is completely up to you. And then I'll just show you the light and then we'll stop there. Well, I'll stop and come back to everybody. And then I'm just going to go in with a highlight now. I want some white. So when you get a reflection on a vase, so how translucent you go is up to you. I've thinned mine down a bit. So I want to bring the shapes over the top and just literally just pop a series of these shapes in. I'm kind of bringing them in around a similar direction. And then there's a bit here. Because you do just get this little bit of a pop there. It's just that you get the shapes of often the windows or something like that, or lights reflected in the vase itself. There's a very bright bit there. Let's see what else I can see. There's a bit here on the edge, which you'd expect to see because it's quite shiny. A little bit there. So that's all we're doing. We're just really just a lighter there, and it just often gives us just enough that we know there's a very bright, there's something brighter light on there. And obviously when you've got your flowers in, it will all kind of make sense as well. I hope that's helpful. Obviously the table we can do this, we can just wiggle our brush about to make that lovely surface. And again, we can just thin our paints right down so it's going away. So if you've always wondered how to get that, that's a really great little tip on there. So yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed that. But I think it's a good thing actually is to realise you don't have to, not everything has to be a finite thing. You can just work through and gain lots of knowledge in the time that you've got to do them. And then you could always add to this at any point later. Acrylics are fabulous for that. So you can layer up. So I hope you've enjoyed that and it's been really helpful. And that will be our final pause.